We've got to talk to Peter Carr, Labour MP for Hove, Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. He's up at the Labour Party conference, of course, today in Liverpool. Peter, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. It's really good to be with you.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. Obviously, you're here to talk about Northern Ireland, but before we do that, let's just talk about Keir Starmer. He's got a speech coming up this afternoon, quite an important speech, you might say. This is his kind of opportunity to prove to the world, and perhaps to Britain anyway, that he's worthy of being the next Prime Minister of this country. How's he going to do that?
Well, we're going to hear the speech in a short time, just a couple of hours now, so he'll be able to prove with his words and his actions and the reaction that he'll get from the hall then. But when you say how's he going to do it, we're 17 points ahead in the polls today, but not just the overall polls. Overall, Keir Starmer is seen as a better Prime Minister in the polls than Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. We're ahead on security, keeping our communities safe, on the economy, but also on law and order and investing in running our public services. So it's not just that the Labour Party is doing well in one or two areas, or not just doing well overall. The Labour Party is earning the trust across the spectrum of policies. We're shouldering the weight of being a government in waiting. That's the Labour Party going into this speech today, and what you're going to see from Keir is giving a bit more focus to that and a bit more direction to that, and he'll be spelling out our vision for a better Britain going forward. And I believe, he believes, we believe in the Labour Party that it is a vision of a better Britain that is rooted in the mainstream aspirations of where the country is. The Tory party right now, particularly last Friday, leapt away from the centre ground of politics. It deserted most people in this country. The Labour Party is now shouldering a bigger load as a result, because we are the only party that is in the centre ground of British politics. But you will see we're responding with sensible, implementable, bold policies that match the scale of the challenge, but are also very, very sensible.
Well, I mean, the trouble with not being in government is you are a government in waiting, possibly, or you may just be in waiting. Neil Kinnock thought he was a government in waiting, and then he didn't win the election. The bottom line is you have to actually win an election to be in government. And if you weren't leading in the polls against the Tory party, which has just been through possibly one of the most difficult periods in the history of any government, and with some of the mistakes that they made, I'd be very surprised. But I don't agree that the Tories deserted the people. They've given a load of people a tax cut, which many people will think is a good thing. The fact is that it's now gone horribly wrong, because the American US dollar is riding very high, and every currency around the world is down against the dollar. The euro has gone below parity. Nobody's talked about that. The yen was so weak that the Japanese central bank had to put their interest rates up. So, it's not simply a problem that Liz Truss has created, or that Kwasi Kwarteng has created. It's a problem around the world at the moment. But I take your point that the Tories are not doing a great job, and I'm certainly not sitting here to defend them. But you're talking a very good game, but, doing it is not so easy.
That's why you see the great policies that we have. When it comes to law and order, we're going to return community policing, a community hub to all the communities that need it. We're going to prioritise making sure that women and girls aren't just safe in communities, they feel safe in communities. We, for example, on law and order, are going to propose a criminal sanction for the criminal exploitation of children. We posed this to the Tories and they voted against it. This is about adults who are bringing children into criminal enterprise, and there's no specific crime for it. That's just on law and order. On the economy, we're going to tax fairly, spend wisely. We're going to make sure that we...
Forgive me, Peter, just to interrupt you. There's been lots of cities in this country where children have been sexually exploited for years and years and years, and Labour administrations in those local areas did nothing about them. You can also talk to Sadiq Khan about the levels of crime in London. He's a Labour mayor. He's done nothing to bring those levels of crime down. Crime is at its height and is worse than ever in London. Will somebody tell him what your policies are?
And it's precisely because we are in the 2020s facing forward. The election is going to be in 2024, and you see when it comes to crime, Yvette Cooper making sure that we're having policies that meet the challenges that we have of crime today going forward, which is why we're ahead in the polls on crime. The country is increasingly turning to Labour for the solutions of the big challenges. Now, we can talk to individual failures in different parts of the country, but
well, where Labour are in charge, no, it's not individual failures, Peter. Andy Burnham in Manchester. Andy Burnham in Manchester.
The violent crime is rising. The violent crime has risen by 18%. Convictions for violent crime has fallen by 18%. Sadiq Khan and mayors and regional mayors don't run the court system, so why are convictions falling? Why is there?
Well, because the police are in special measures in Manchester.
Waiting for their date in court. Our criminal justice system is not being well run. The Labour Party will make sure that criminals actually go before court and victims get their day in court. Right now,
okay,
1/4 of all trials are failing because victims aren't even able to wait 2 years to get their day in court. This isn't fit.
Okay, listen, we've got to run, Peter. Let me get the Northern Ireland question into you just before we do. I appreciate your time. You say you would call a border poll if you were in power.
No, what I say is that we will stick to the letter and spirit of the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement says that if there is a majority view in Northern Ireland for reunification, the law says that the Secretary of State has to organise a border poll. All I have said is if those circumstances emerge, and right now that's not the case. If those circumstances emerge, I will revert to the Good Friday Agreement and I will implement the law as it stands. This has been the case ever since the Good Friday Agreement was signed. This is the case of Tory policy as well as Labour policy. But if those circumstances emerge, I will revert to the Good Friday Agreement, but I won't resile from sticking to the letter of the law. That's what I've said.
Peter Carr, thank you very much indeed.